I'm your moderator for this afternoon's presentation. I'm Dwight Bowers. I'm curator of the entertainment collections at the Smithsonian, at the National Museum of American History. And we are about to meet the cast of Follies. And I think you'll know who they are. My first question is to the audience. How many of you have seen Follies? Well, you're in for a treat. It's an extraordinary production of an extraordinary show. My first question is, in a celebrated review of the tryout of the original Broadway production, Frank Rich wrote in the Harvard Crimson when he was an undergrad that Follies is a musical about the death of the musical. And its composer, Stephen Sondheim, says the show is about the death of the dream. How did that inform your performances? Or does it?
Well, I didn't know about the death of the musical. I don't know if any of you did. The death of the dream, I think we all have, I guess I'll speak for myself, but I think it's pretty evident that our dreams have been shattered. They're not there anymore. I mean, when we were young and our young selves are there talking, we had all these hopes and dreams,
Yes.
and then it kind of just disintegrated, really, yeah.
The rest of you?
The death of innocence. I think
Yes.
the death of innocence in Loveland. You know, we had dreams, but we were with the wrong people, and I think it didn't quite turn out the way we expected.
I know Phyllis has a line where she says that when we're young, there's no limit to the amount of roles we hope to play, and we learn to choose. So I think you have many, many dreams when you're young and you go into the theater and the Follies, and you realize that life takes different routes, and they don't always come true.
Danny, do you have any observations?
I have absolutely nothing to say about that. It's as usual.
Worry not,
I
darling.
know it's an unusual show because we actually come face to face with our past, not just metaphorically. Actually, come face to face with our past, and we're able to look at our past in a place that conjures these dreams and these ghosts. I'd never heard that quote before. I think it's a wonderful place to start. I mean, if you're going to write
Yes.
a musical.
And of course, it's also about the death of that particular theatre, which brings us all together in the first place, to be able to reflect, I suppose, on our own relationships with one another and our own past history.
This is a question that is perhaps a little bit introspective, but do you each bring ghosts to this production? Do you bring ghosts of past things that you've done? Are there elements of other roles that you've played in this?
I bring a lot of ghosts. I don't think other roles, but a lot of ghosts. Yeah.
I think I certainly bring a lot of all those old things, you know. I think because when you get to our age, God forbid I'm saying that, but, you know, one has lived a life, and we've all performed in many other productions, and I think you bring a little of everything you learn along the way to what you're playing right now.
How did you each get involved in this particular production? How did it come to you? Did you seek it, or did they seek you?
Well, I was down here in Washington a couple of years ago, and I was talking to Eric, and he said for the first Signature Theater Award that they were going to be doing Follies here, and then when they finally were getting ready, that was 2 years ago. In 2 years, Eric spoke to me about it, but that's how it happened.
I auditioned for it. I've been spending my time the last few years in daytime television, so I was kind of out of the loop. And I think that Eric, while he knew me and had seen me a little bit, really didn't know know me that well. So I auditioned. I was excited to be auditioned for this role, and thrilled to be doing it.
Jan?
I was doing a play called Wings in New York, and my agent called me and said that that's the one person who saw it. So, thank you for coming. Yeah, it was all gibberish. But so my agent called and said, they've offered you Follies, and it's kind of how I kind of get every role I think I've ever done that's a good role, is that everyone else has said no. So I didn't know what Follies was because I live under a rock. But so my agents, I said, no, I don't want to do it because I don't want to go out of town. I have a 15-year-old son. And so they said, well, just Google it. Just please, just look at it. And so I looked at it and I read it. And of course, Sondheim is such a phenomenal lyricist and composer that you can't say no when something like this comes along, because it is just so beautifully haunting and gorgeous and deep. And it's also, when you said something about the death of the musical, I don't do that many musicals, and there are parts of me that wish that some of them would die, and that we would come to this place like in Could I Leave You, where I love what he does with it because it comes from a scene. And I think that that's the beauty of musicals, is that you can't talk anymore. You go to a different place where you have to sing, and I think that is such a beautiful concept. So I think I fell in love with that, and I fell in love with how this was constructed in that way.
Danny?
I got a phone call. I was doing South Pacific in New York.
I will add to that. You were a wonderful Luther Billis.
It's a lot more than Wings. I was doing South Pacific in New York.
Musical Wings.
Yeah, exactly. And Jim Moore, who is our conductor, was conducting South Pacific at the time. It was about a year ago. And he came back from the very first production meeting they had, and he said, to let you know, you're going to get an offer for the role of Buddy in Follies. And I said, fantastic, fantastic. And I really knew nothing about the show. I knew a lot of the songs from the show, but I'd never seen a production before. I still haven't. I would still...
You should see this one, it's excellent.
I hear it's very good.
Yes.
I would love to, really see a production. I'm going to go back and look at old productions now after this. And I was flattered to get the offer, and once I realized that it was definitely going to happen, I went to work on it and really tried to work on it for several months, researching everything I could about it. But and that was about it. I was just so honored to be asked, and the opportunity to get to work with Bernadette, and of course, this before I knew who else was in the cast, but they mentioned Bernadette was going to be doing it. That was, an amazing thing to me. And of course, it would be my third time to work with Sondheim. And, you just don't pass that up when it comes along.
And Elaine?
Well, for me, my story is that I was offered the role, and I've only ever done one other Sondheim piece in New York City at the City Opera. I played Mrs. Lovett. and I, like the rest of us, I guess, I'm kind of in awe of Stephen Sondheim and his wonderful lyric writing and composing, and I knew this would give me an opportunity to sing probably one of the great songs in musical theatre for a woman, and that is I'm Still Here, and it's such a brilliant song. And
she knocks it out of the park.
Yes, she does.
Well, whatever. And so I just wanted, to seize the opportunity, as it were, to be able to do it. And likewise, I also knew Bernadette was going to be in the show. I didn't know the rest of you. No, I'm kidding. No, but and the only times I've ever worked in the States, twice before, as I said, once at the New York City Opera, and then in Andrew Lloyd Webber's, what was that, Sunset Boulevard, on Broadway years ago, and I don't get the opportunity that often to work here. So again, another reason. And they said that that Washington was going to be beautiful in the spring. So, you know, you have to weigh all these things up. No, so I really wanted to play this role and to get to sing this song.
Speaking of your performances, I'd like to have you tell us a little bit your characters and a little bit how you structured your performance of the characters.
Well,
How long you got?
And let's start with you, Bernadette.
Sally, I always describe as horribly, horribly disappointed. She, first of all, she was 19 years old when she fell in love with Ben. And if any of you remember what that first love was like in your life, where you just can't let it go for a long time, she married the next guy, Buddy, who took care of her, you know. And I think it was okay for a while, and then he moved her to Phoenix, where she was nothing to do. And so she put all her energies into her sons, and they couldn't wait to get away from her. Because, you know, when you're hovering around your children and you're overbearing. And then she sort of just rotting away in Phoenix with nothing to do. And so she'd drink and think about her past. And then he started fooling around on her because she probably was in bed and not responsive to him, not taking care of him, and not cooking for him, and not doing anything for him because she was so horribly depressed, I think, and sad, and just thinking about when she was happy. So then this invitation comes, and it's like, wow, it's when I was happy and I want to go. So she gets there, and she's thrilled to be there, and hoping she's going to see Ben, and hoping maybe, you know, because she figures she's for sure 30 years have gone by, and of course he loves her. Of course he loves her. And, you know, his marriage probably, now he realizes the truth, and he's going to see her, and he's going to realize it. And then she's horribly let down again at the end of the show. So it's a slow, her hopes are up here, and slowly they start disintegrating when Buddy says, marry you, you know, he like starts hitting at her with it. And what was the question?
You pretty well did that.
Oh, okay. That describes her.
And Ron, you played Benjamin Stone before.
I played Ben when I was 37 or 38, way too young. And but you know, when you play a character like this, they live with you. They live with you, and as you kind of become more mature and go through life and life's journey and experiences, something will happen, or you will observe something, and you'll go, yeah, that's what he was going through at that time. I mean, a lot of great characters stay with you. I can't speak for everyone. I think we're all still finding our way character-wise. I know I am, and we've just been running for a couple of weeks now, and we've got a continuity now of running the show, and it really helps us to find more of who these people are, and I'm still finding him. And he's a type A guy, very driven from day one, did not have a lot of money, and was going to, by God, he's going to have money, and he's going to be a success at any cost. And he marries someone who he thinks will help him be a success, all for the wrong reasons. He is not a guy you want to get in his way of. If you get in his way, he'll cut you down. I mean, he's a real ambitious guy, and I've met a few like him. And matter of fact, I kind of played one on the show that I played for 15 years. But I'm still finding my way. I'm loving the journey that he's taking me on, and.
So I take it that the performance of today is different from the performance that you did before.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, I hope in the ballpark.
Jan, did you have a particular inspiration for Sally? Or for Phyllis? Or did you just...
I did have one for Sally, yes, I did. But
Yes.
they offered me Phyllis.
Yeah.
So there went that dream. No, not a particular. I truly try to go inside out, not outside in. So I think it's pretty obvious that she came from the Midwest, I think, and how specific do you want to get? Her dad was a minister, her mother was a kindergarten teacher.
So you did real
so
preparation.
It's very specific to me, but the upshot is that in 1941 there weren't many choices for women, and when we did come to New York and we joined the Follies, Ben came around, and I think he was probably a very big catch, for all the women in the Follies who, and I think that Phyllis just thought he was just the ultimate, and she was going to work as hard as she possibly could to get his love and to get his approval. And I think that the catharsis when she comes back to this reunion after 30 years of being a political wife and then him being the president of some, foundation in New York, he's had an incredible life change. He's gone from being a big shot in D.C. to the president of a foundation in New York, but any kind of change like that can affect a marriage. And then when she goes to this reunion, which is ostensibly about her, he has been not available to her, but he is so mean to her and so dismissive and so rude that I think she all of a sudden, it's just like an entire blast from the past of what have I done? And I think she realizes that it's not her, that he doesn't love himself, so he can't love her. And she gives him an ultimatum, and the last you see of her until the very end is, Could I Leave You, where it's a blistering song, where she tells him, I have done everything I possibly can for you, and you give me nothing in return, and I'm done. I'm done. And the sad part to me is that I really think that she really loves him. And I think that she's bought into this marriage and she really wants it to work. But I think it's an impossibility with how he is and who he is. So
He also realizes at that moment that he made a huge mistake. That she did give him everything, and he was so oblivious to it and dismissive of it.
I think that's the most wonderful part of the journey, is that Ben does have a realization that she's a terrific woman. She's tried very, very hard to be there for him and loves him, and so it's an interesting journey, and it changes every night.
Danny, you have such a wonderful desperate sense of humor as the character of Buddy. How much of it do you feel in the character, and how much do you bring to it?
A sense of humor. Gosh, to me, he's really a tragic character. He's somebody who hides all his sadness through his humor and through his good humor. He's a traveling salesman. He spends a lot of time away. He's got 2 sons, but he's desperately in love with his wife, but that love is never requited, and it's very difficult for him. But he smiles all the way through, and he believes that someday it will, despite the fact that she's always been secretly in love with somebody else, or not so secretly, and I've been having an affair, and that everything will work out okay. And that's basically, he's not living in reality all those years, which is sad. But it's all very Chekhovian, isn't it? Everybody's in love with the wrong person, and everybody has their ideas that they're not getting, their ideals that they want, and they're trying to attain them, but they're going about it in the absolutely wrong way.
And you have the song that explains that, the God, Why I Love You, Me blues.
Yeah, it's a wonderful song. It's a vaudeville turn, it's a very different number from the other numbers that come before it.
Elaine,
say about that number.
You're the survivor of the group, or at least it seems so from your character. Your character's song, as I understand, was based on the career of Joan Crawford. Did you recall that at all in your interpretation of the role?
I have to admit that that didn't kind of figure big time for me when I was looking at this material. I know that certainly there's that iconic photograph of Joan Crawford in the crumbling theatre, wearing the long boa and everything and looking up. And I think everybody, well, maybe they don't know, but apparently that photograph was the inspiration for this play, for this musical.
Gloria
Gloria Swanson.
Oh,
Yes.
Gloria Swanson, I
Yeah.
mean that. Sorry,
Yeah.
what did you say? Joan Crawford?
Joan Crawford.
Oh, here I go. I'm always getting them mixed up. No, Gloria Swanson, excuse me. So Joan Crawford, no, I don't know that. So you live and learn. So that's obviously, that piece of research passed me by.
Yes.
But looking at this character, you're right, she is the one that has survived. Not
Yes,
only-
amidst the rubble, she's the survivor.
Yeah, she's a survivor through and through, absolutely. And she's somebody, I think, that, as the song really describes, I think, entirely who this woman is and what she's been through. And, you know, good times and bum times, she has seen them all. She's done practically everything there is to do. And of all of the characters in the play, she probably is the only one that is actually still in the biz, as it were, and still out there doing it, and has indeed morphed from one career to another, you know, from career to career to career. The song really, the lyric of the song really does tell her story, I think. And I also think she has great courage as well. And she's a brave kind of person, because she's probably had to kind of keep on going and keep on getting out there and reinventing herself, and probably has gone from one man to another to another. I don't know that there's been a great amount of stability in her life on that level. And so I think but that's why she's a survivor and triumphant in that as well, I think, at the end, in the fact that she can honestly stand there and say, yep, I had to get out there and do it all, and I've done it, and I'm still here. That's what the song says.
There's an incredible amount of dancing in the show, and that's a pleasure for those of us that love dancing in the musical. Was it a particular challenge to get up to the snuff
Yeah.
for that role? Tell us.
Oh, gosh, that dancing is tough, isn't it? Bernadette, we worked, how many hours did it take us all?
Well, we did 2 hours every morning.
Every day for like 4 weeks. I mean, we clocked up, I don't know, well, after the first week, they told us that we had been rehearsing this, we'd learned the number, and it took us 12 hours just to learn it. And then, of course, we had to try and perfect it, and my knees don't like it. But I do, I love it, it's fun, it's good fun.
I thought it was funny when I was doing my cues. I taped my cues for the show, for the entire show was 4 minutes of cues, and the dance Mirror Mirror is 8 minutes. So we started with that, but I think that tap is, or dancing in general, is such a great leveler. We all came in, we all had to put on our tap shoes, we all had to sweat, and we had such a great time, just a great time doing it.
Well, Jan, you erupt in The Story of Lucy and Jessie in dancing. Was that a tough number particularly?
Well, it's yeah. I mean, it was tough on me because I don't dance, but you know, I think it was choreographed pretty much for the male ensemble. So I kind of, you know, I do a lot of posing and waving and getting out of the way
And being tossed.
And so it was, but it, you know, the male ensemble is absolutely stunning, and they're 30 years younger and have 20 years of experience. So it was just amazing. It's amazing to watch them dance, and it's I mean, they're choreographed within a millimeter of their lives. I mean, and I am just stunned every time I see them move. It's really quite amazing. And I think that, you know, I always say that I'm not talented enough to be in the ensemble, because I have to say our ensemble is absolutely just incredible. The people that they have hired are so talented beyond belief, and I think they work the hardest of anybody in the show.
I agree.
Bernadette, I know you've played a number of Sondheim characters. The Witch in Into the Woods, and Desiree, most recently, in A Little Night Music, and Dot in Sunday in the Park. What is it about Sally that is particularly appealing to you as an actress?
It's an emotional role, and it's sort of like a disintegrating of reality. But for her, it's very real. For her, loving him and perhaps being with him is really real. But yet, when Buddy might say things that it may not happen, it's very fragile for her, and starts to, because that's all she has. That's all she has. That was, she's horribly, horribly disappointed, and she's hanging her dreams on this one hook and when starts to be taken away, she starts to crumble. And I just think it's a very, very interesting, sad, beautiful character. And romantic. She's such a romanticist.
And Losing My Mind is such an extraordinary number, and you do it so beautifully.
Well, thank you.
Are you haunted by the specters of those who have performed it before?
I try not to think of them. There's enough ghosts on that stage as it is. So. No, basically, we're doing this for the first time for us, and this is our experience and our reality, or not reality. And this is her, Losing My Mind is her personal disappointment within that song. So we mustn't think of those that went before.
Jan and Could I Leave You? And when you erupt, when you've kept this cool exterior for the most part, and then you build to this head of steam for that particular song. How do you structure a performance to lead to that point?
I don't know. You step on the ride, I think. You just... it kind of builds on its own. This is a tricky book for me because we don't go on and stay on. We go on and then we go off, and then there are 3 songs, and then we go back on, but we're kind of still at that level. So your backstage or your offstage life has to kind of keep alive. So you have to kind of keep the pot stirring as what happened just. What was the last scene with Ben? What was the last scene with Sally? What did Buddy and I just do? So there, you have a different relationship with everybody. So I think we all kind of feel that we have to kind of keep in the game. And, every time I approach Ben, if there's some kind of a put down and I think she's just through talking to Buddy and talking to Sally and seeing Sally have this, to me, ridiculous dream and agenda for this party, and how he's going. I just know he's going to probably lead her on, and it's just it's. And when he says the things he says to her in the final scene before "Could I Leave You," he says, pack a bag and disappear. The only thing I want from you is a divorce, and I think it's just this. It's like, to me, it would be kind of like physical abuse. If somebody just went at you and at you and at you, and then just finally went whap across the face. And I think it just is a clarity. All of a sudden, everything she's done, her life, what she's given up it just starts to come in as clear as a bell. And that's how she gets to these incredibly intelligent lyrics and these it's just poetic what she says almost. And I think that's what you have to, that's what I do at least.
Going back to what Jan was saying earlier about being at different pitches, you having to remember the scene before, where you were with that character, made it very difficult for me during rehearsal, because we take them in, we go rehearse, and you really didn't have that continuity, that flow that got you there during the rehearsal process. So as soon as we started really kind of running the show, it really helped us. And I think by doing the show now, it's really helping me a lot. Going back to what she was saying, it gives you that, you remember where you were.
I often rehearse scenes at home, and go over them individually and try and find little moments here and there. But I found that I had to go home and run the entire show from the beginning to the end every time, just so I had an idea of where my character was at each particular time, because it's so disjointed in that way, just so I had a through line, an arc.
Ron, how does structuring a performance like Gaylord Ravenel in Showboat compare to what you do as Benjamin Stone? They're both losers.
Yeah. Oh, that.
Not when Ron plays him.
I don't know. Of course, I was 31 when I did Ravenel, and it was such difficult music to sing. It was a really singing acting, and this is a more acting singing. So it brought different challenges, if you will. But yes, the characters were both kind of had sad endings,
yes.
didn't they? With a little hope. I think there's a little hope for Ben. Not that much.
He was wonderful as Ravenel. We did Showboat together in 1986. In 1918. Exactly.
The first.
No, in 1986 we did it in Summerstock together, and I remember your performance. It was transcendent. It was so wonderful. Really, it was. Yeah, it was. It really was.
You were young.
That must have been it. Right, exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about the transition to Loveland. What set of muscles do you use to develop the character up to that point? And how do you build that character to go into Loveland? And how do you return to the reality of the show? Or if there is a reality to the show?
Well, I think the show kind of just takes you, it is, I would say, well, let's see what happens. Like it takes you on this journey. And very true what Jan said is when you're off, it's like you have to stay there when you get back on, so you continue what you're doing, your journey. So all of a sudden we have a huge blowout when I'm supposed to go home with him, and he says he's not going to do it, and then we all start yelling at our younger selves for all the disappointments that we didn't do when we were young. And boom, the curtain comes down. And then this beautiful, supposedly beautiful play, of birdies and heartsies and, And for me, it's just devastating because it's all the hopes and dreams when you're young. You believe all that. And to have it all crumble. We were walking through our hopes and our dreams, for me, is what go. And then we'll get to the follies, and it's all our follies of
Folly, each of our folly.
Yeah, exactly. And basically we come back again to having to remember where we were and that hookup of, and for me, for Sally, it's being devastated and realizing there is no, just to give up her dream.
I've read many copies of the script and the changes that have happened with Sally's character. She was a much more desperate character at one time than in the production that I see now.
Yes?
Yes. That she seems to have been someone who has experimented with suicide, etc., to escape the world.
Well, her line used to be, the line that I say is, he says, tomorrow we'll figure out what we're going to do. And I say, it is tomorrow, which is daylight already. It's the next day. But it used to be, oh dear Lord, it is tomorrow, which was so hopeless, rather than without the oh dear Lord, which there were too many, and Steve said anyway. Now I believe that she's giving up. the folly of the obsession, finally, of him.
So you do think there is hope at the end of Follies?
I think she evolved. She evolved. I don't know what's going to happen for her. We discuss it. but I do think because I do believe people do evolve. And so I think for that moment, yeah.
Ron, in Live, Laugh, Love, your Follies number, how do you structure going from Berlin and austere atmosphere to chaos?
Well, I think that's his folly, control, and I'm debonair, and this is the way I live life, and life in control. I mean, he's a control freak, and I think that's been one of his problems. And I think, when he realizes, and going back to the scene with Phyllis, when he realizes that he doesn't love me, I don't love me. I've been living my life with a set of values that are all driven by not self-love, but from need. And I think he finally gets that, and he breaks. And how do I get there? I don't know. I go through the music, and it says you start breaking down, which Mr. Sondheim helped us very well. But yeah, I think that's structured very well. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. The costumes are extraordinary for this production. How much did that inform your characters? To have the costume to refer to, did that reflect what you wanted to do with the character?
Well, I mean, she's come to find Ben, get noticed, hope he notices her, so she wears red. He can't miss red. It's like anywhere she's standing, he's going to, see this red flash. And she gets there early, like 45 minutes early. So I think, to be noticed, she has to be noticed. That's her thing for him.
Elaine, your costume is extraordinary too. It's very
It's
showy.
very blue.
Yes.
Can't miss blue either. No. Blue, I don't know why blue. But I think, for me, it was trying to think about who she had been in the movies and also that photograph I mentioned earlier, the Gloria Swanson photograph, with the boa and all of that. And I think she probably is a character who's quite out there. She's not that subtle a kind of person. And so I think she, as Ben says to her, that outfit is a triumph of restraint. I think for her that is quite restrained. But, at least she hasn't got the slit up the skirt and, there are a few feathers, but they're minimal. And, but it is quite low cut. So, but I think at least, as I say, there's not the slit up the skirt as well. So for her, that is quite a triumph of restraint. And I just like blue, so blue it was.
All right, I think now it's time to have some questions from the audience. We have a microphone here and we have a microphone here, and we hope that you'll use it. If you could go to the microphone. Yes.
When I was 5 years old, I was fortunate enough to see the original production.
Oh.
Not 5 years old now. And ever since the original production, which I saw many, many times, I've seen various productions of this, which were very inadequate. This production, for me, lives up to that original production. And I was bowled away by it. I couldn't believe that something could be that powerful, because that original production has haunted me for 40 years. And I felt like when I saw this, I was coming back home again. I was 18 then, and my hope, of course, was to go to New York and become famous and all of that, as an 18-year-old person who loves theater does. And my life did not take me there. It took me into the academic theater, and I teach at a university. When I came to see this, like 40 years later, it was like that dream of being in New York had changed so much. The show devastated me, and I'm seeing it 3 more times, so I'm very excited.
All right, we have one on this side.
been
Makes
very
it so
interesting
powerful.
hearing you talk about your characters, and you've been very generous about that. And I'm wondering if any of you has heard anything here today from the other actors that where you learned something about those other characters that you really hadn't before.
The struggle off stage is such a difficult one, keeping the level that we left the stage with 15 minutes before and then coming back at that same level. I wasn't sure whether I was the only one or not, so it was good to hear,
Yeah.
actually, that we're all in that same, having that same issue.
And also, I think that just by running the show and having the scenes that I have with Sally, I think that I really, truly love Sally. I mean, I think we're really, really close. And so one thing I've learned in the running of it is that, you know, one more thing to add to Ben's list of inadequacies, I guess, is that he's going to break her heart, and I find that disgusting and repulsive, and so I have a very warm feeling for Sally, which is not a competition. I know where this is going to end, and Sally doesn't, and that breaks my heart.
All right.
Thank you. I happened to see the show twice. The first time was with my 2 divorced parents, which was interesting. And the second time was with a group of my friends who were all 20-somethings. And my question to all of you is, do you think the overall theme or message of the show changes between generations, or do you think it's uniform between 20-somethings and 50-somethings?
That's interesting.
Well, it's interesting because we meet many people after the show of different ages, and I'm always curious to see what generation thinks what. And I think it truly depends on the person and what their life has been so far, but I have seen 19-year-olds out there devastated, and I have seen 65-year-olds out there who say, oh, you know, I didn't get it the first time I saw it, or you know, so it's been fascinating, but I do think it probably depends on the person.
All right.
Believe it or not, I didn't catch the original production. But Follies was actually the show that got me into studying dramaturgy. I'm studying to be a dramaturg right now. And so with all of this, you know, with all of the different productions throughout the years and people saying, is it revivable, you know, a lot of the dissent between people is how much the ghosts play a part of it and how realistic the show is. So when do you think the ghosts in your show take over, like other than Loveland? Do you think that your characters can see the ghosts?
No. That's what we were told.
What'd she say?
That's what we were told.
No, but I mean, no, we discussed this with Eric Schaefer, the director, and he was adamant that, well, to me anyway, I don't know about, I can't speak for everybody else, but that I was never to see my ghost. And I had conversations with him about this because certainly at the beginning, when we first rehearsed, Sally did indeed look directly at her ghost. And so I had a few problems with this. I kept thinking, have I got this right or wrong or what? I mean, and for me personally, I think that probably one should never see one's ghost because it's about our own, each individual's life, and you remember your past. You can remember it in your mind's eye, in your memory. Excuse the pun. So for me personally, I never refer or look to my ghost because I remember it. If I did, it would be half-hearted. I would never actually see her.
At the end of if Could I Leave You is when I see, and that's when we see our ghosts, and then it takes us into, we're all talking to our ghosts and what happened to you. I can't believe you're so stupid. You ruined my life. And then we go into La La Oz, Loveland.
It's different for everyone.
But I don't think we should see our ghosts.
All right.
Hello. I have a question for Bernadette, actually. You've sung a lot of Sondheim material, and my question is, if you were having a conversation with someone who maybe wasn't familiar with Stephen's work, what one song would you recommend they listen to? Like, you have to listen to this.
Oh, dear.
an easy question.
That's a tough one.
Oh, thank you. You know what's interesting about his work is I was in Sunday in the Park and Into the Woods, and then I go to see night music, and I'm like, and the music, it's glorious, and it's classical, and I go, how did that same man that wrote that write these other things? And then you come here. The thing, and then he wrote Pacific Overtures. The thing about, I think, Steve, he's sort of like an actor playing a part. He goes, now what is this show about, and how do I best, within the music, portray what the show is about and what it's feeling? Like in Sunday in the Park was about pointillism. So all of a sudden he went, all the music was different. So one song, I don't know. There's in my concerts I choose songs that I'm singing. He has, there are songs that I like to sing that I love for people to hear, like Children Will Listen. It's a thought that is lovely to let people remind people. There are things to be reminded of. There is No One Is Alone, which is a great thing to be reminded of. And then there are all the dramatic things that he writes and the devastating things, or Leave You, or, Losing My Mind. So he's not just one thing. So it would be hard to say, to get to know him, listen to this one thing, I think. Anyway. Thank you.
All right.
Hi there. This question doesn't have to do specifically with Follies, but it sort of relates to the general themes of change over time and sort of the death of the musical. And I was wondering what any of you thought was the greatest threat to the American theater today. And if you had any advice for the next generation of theater practitioners about how to sort of reinstate and reinstill the necessity of theater in as a part of American life.
It's big.
A $55 million musical could be the death of it.
It's true.
Yeah, well, cost.
It's like a Spider-Man is what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Something so big and costs so much, and how are they ever going to make their money back? But that's their problem.
What, the defunding of the NEA?
Things like that.
Lots of things. She stumped the crowd. Stumped the panel.
Well, it's very hard because I think that theater doesn't pay as much as other entertainment mediums, so it's very hard. And I feel like I'm very lucky because I live in the Manhattan Plaza in Manhattan, which is for performing artists. And to have that funding for that, I can afford to do a $250 a week show that I really want to do because it's something that's close to my heart, or it has a message that I really believe in or something. But I think that the economics are what could be the death of theater.
I saw the show the opening weekend and absolutely loved it, and I want to congratulate you, the Variety and the New York Times write-up, and I think it really encapsulated. I was fortunate enough to see all the Sondheim that they had here at the Kennedy Center several years ago, and they pointed out that this was actually the exclamation point to that series that had been at the Kennedy Center before, and I totally agree with that. And I had two questions. One was, as far as the red dress goes, was that I had never seen another production of Follies. Was that something that was meant to have a symbolism beyond him recognizing the red color? Because it also seemed as though the dress was not as ornate or formal as the other costumes that were as part of the show.
Well, I think Liz in Phoenix has a certain amount of money, has a simplicity about her, so to speak, a naivete sort of, and I think that was sort of basically that it should be, red was enough, so. Mm-hmm.
And my other question was Stephen Sondheim here for opening night? And I'm just curious. I mean, you know, I would have loved to have been sitting next to him to see his expressions or.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just curious, you know. Like,
He was here during rehearsals and opening night and saw the first preview as well. He was very involved, and we were lucky, felt very lucky to be working with him.
And actually, I have an insider's secret that he was weeping at the end.
well, you all did him proud, so thank you.
Yes.
Hi. I know you have a show tonight, so I'll try to be quick. I'm a New Yorker, so I speak a lot. Anyhow, I just want to thank all of you. I saw the show last week, and I'm seeing it 2 more times. I'm bringing my kids and another friend, and a friend I saw her last week with a friend who came down from New York. But and I did see the original production when I was 3. No, not really. What amazed me about the production is that, as someone said before, it stayed with him for so many years. I felt the same way, and I have seen other productions of Follies, not too many, because it's a difficult show to put on. But I found this production, your production, so profoundly moving, so emotional. As great as the music is, as great as the, fun lines are and all of that, I found the emotion of it to be more powerful than I've ever seen in a production of Follies, more meaningful. And it really amazed me. I didn't remember it being so powerful. And I was thinking, did they rewrite it? Did they do anything? Are they just better actors? Probably. But it's a testament, I think, to the living theater, that you can take a vehicle that has inherent greatness and make it even better, other times around. So that's my comment, and I do have a question. The typical New Yorker question. Is it going to come to New York?
Don't think we know at this
No,
point.
we
We
don't
know
know.
at the moment.
No idea.
Yeah, because it's so expensive. I mean, it's a big show.
Yeah.
And I just hope, I know, the money, I know.
Yeah.
Actually, my friend asked Danny Burstein this question last week after the show. But you don't know. I mean, so you have no idea.
No.
No.
Well, I hope so.
We just opened. We're thrilled to be opened.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Height requirement.
Make a good masthead.
So, I'm a very literal person, so even the most basic of I thought the ghosts were real people. I'm sorry. When I found out that they weren't, that was a huge epiphany for me. So, especially for those of you that I guess weren't familiar with Follies, did any of you guys, when you were rehearsing for your role, reading the script, anything, did you guys have any huge, probably more complex aha moments?
Well, I did because I didn't know the show, and I know when we did the first read sing through, I kept saying to my younger self, "What the hell is going on?" And she said, "We're doing a read sing through of Follies," and I said, "Wow." And she said, "You'll understand later." But yeah, I didn't know what was going on.
I can remember thinking that after we did the first kind of read sing through, I also didn't know the piece that well, and I was amazed at how I got completely and utterly over emotional at the end of it, and I couldn't kind of gather myself, which was a huge surprise to me. Having watch everybody and hear everybody playing their characters, it all made so much more sense. And I found it terribly moving, very, very emotional. But I have to tell you, I don't know, when we got to the Loveland thing, I thought, now I'm lost. I don't know what's going on. So from that moment on, I was a bit lost. But I loved what you were doing. I loved especially you, because Danny and Bernadette, and well, all of you really, because I only have this one song, so I was just kind of sitting on the edge watching everybody else. It was so amazing to see, even really, really early on at the first read sing-through, that everybody would kind of you knew what you were doing and had great insight already into your character. So that, for us, for me, as an onlooker almost, it was brilliant, because I think that's what made it so moving for me, because the story was being told.
The first time we saw the first time, remember we were all in the rehearsal room, and when Suzanne, the first time we saw the ghost, the first ghost, and she's a stunning woman. But she was just in her sweatpants and a t-shirt, and that gorgeous haunting music, you know how the musical starts, it's just so beautiful. And to see this beautiful woman just doing this very slow turn, it was just, I burst into tears. I thought it was just the most beautiful.
It's a very complicated show. And I think it stays with you. And I notice so many of friends have said, I've seen so many productions, and this is the clearest. And I say, yeah, because you've seen so many productions. And you get it. And it's the kind of show where there's so many layers to it that you can go back and see it and see other things again and again and again. It's like any great work. There's a lot of layers to this show. And
It's been great finding it too. A friend of mine, I ran into my friend Evan Pappas, who'd done the show in London, and he said that he told me a Michael Bennett quote that on opening night of Follies in 1971, Michael Bennett said that 80% of Follies is the greatest musical ever written, which I thought was wonderful. And that it's that 20%, that elusive 20% that we're all trying to find. To make it transcend, to make it perfect. You work so hard to make it perfect. And, I think we're all still, we just opened, and so we're all still there, trying to attain the unattainable, or maybe it is attainable, we hope,
We have time for one more question.
Hi, so for a show that has so many songs that are really standards and performed in so many concerts and cabarets, some of them by y'all, I wish Bernadette had Broadway Baby in the show. And how has structuring it with the book and going through this entire arc changed your approach to these songs that you might have performed before in a more separate setting? How has that sort of changed your approach to how you address this type of music, or even how you appreciate it?
Well, all the music comes out of what happened before it, and comes out of the dialogue, and that's how you approach it now. If you do a song just by itself, you stand up and you do it, you could make up any kind of story of what happened before, and just, but when it is coming out of the dialogue, or like Buddy's Eyes, I have the first section with him, and then my memories, the ghost, my memory of something that happened between us. I remember that. And then I sing the next section. So that definitely informs what's going on when I sing the next section. Whereas in a concert, the audience doesn't see the ghosts or hear or experience that. So definitely it's a different, it's going to be come out, it's going to be, my intention is going to be different.
there are some songs that work out of context in concert. And I just did a concert a couple of months ago, and a guy says, I have an orchestration, a band orchestration of The Road You Didn't Take. He said, would you like to do that? I says, I don't think that's one that is really a concert piece. You know, it makes sense with the scene and everything, but it's not like a concert number. While these two and numbers that they do, and Buddy's Blues and all that kind of stuff, that kind of works out of it.
But the song you sing at the end, when you go crazy at the end, I think that would work really well out of context.
Doesn't have an ending. I could go crazy, I
Yeah,
guess.
no, you don't have to do that. But I mean, I think the amazing thing about Sondheim's lyric writing is that it works, that many of his songs do work out of context, because within the song, the lyric is the story. The story is there already in the song, like Broadway Baby or Losing My Mind, or, you know, the lyric is there as an entity on its own, with or without the dialogue scenes around it. In many cases, not all, obviously.
For example, you know, Cindy and the Clowns, his most famous pop song that kind of made the pop charts, when people see it in the show, they go, oh, I get that song now.
Right. And people,
I get that
yeah,
song.
people would say, are you going to, when asked me, will you sing it in your concert, will you just sing it? And I won't. I mean, someday I might do it, but I'd have to go back to the scene and relate what happens first. And maybe I do it then, maybe. But it's so beautiful in the show, and it has such meaning of what just happened, that just to get up and sing it, I wouldn't do it. Thank you.
Thank you all for being with me today. And thank all of you.